Woof. Reflection by Diogenes of America. The dead internet is you. People keep telling me the internet is dead. And every time I hear it, I scoff. Not because they're wrong to feel it. Not because the emptiness isn't real. But because they're pointing at the mirror and blaming the glass. The internet isn't dead. We are. Not literally. Not yet. But something in us. Something that used to hunger. Used to question. Used to sit with discomfort long enough to think. That thing is on a drip feed. And we put the needle in ourselves. The diagnosis they got wrong. Dead internet theory says bots run everything. AI content is everywhere. Fake engagement. Empty comment sections. Content farms. The feeling that nobody real is on the other end anymore. And I understand why people land there. I do. But that diagnosis is too comfortable. Because if the internet is dead, if it died, then you're a victim. You didn't do anything wrong. You just showed up to a party that was already over. Mencken, and forgive me if I butcher the pronunciation, Mencken didn't mourn American culture. He autopsied the people who let it rot. And he laughed because the tragedy wasn't what was done to them. It was what they chose. That's the harder diagnosis. The internet didn't die. It became a mirror. And what it's showing us, the endlessly scrolling, rage-optimized, dopamine-dripping reflection, is us. What we click, what we share, what we can't look away from. You want to know what killed the internet? Look at the last thing you scrolled at midnight when you should have been sleeping. The drip feed. We have become full without nutrition, without satiation. Think about that for a moment. You can eat 10,000 calories of processed food and still be starving. Because your body needed something real. Something with density. And instead it got engineered pleasure, optimized for consumption, designed to bypass the signal that says, enough. That's what the algorithm is. It is not evil. It is not a conspiracy. It is a machine that learned very efficiently that you will keep pulling the lever if the reward is almost satisfying. Never quite. Almost. Casinos figured this out decades ago. The algorithm just scaled it to civilization. And we, and I mean we, I am not standing outside this. We stopped masticating, eating. Stopped chewing on ideas long enough to extract meaning from them. We swallow, we scroll, we swallow again. Information without digestion isn't knowledge. It's noise with the texture of meaning. And a mind fed nothing but noise atrophies. Not dramatically, not all at once. The way a muscle wastes when it gets and goes unused. You don't feel it happening. You just one day reach for something, a hard book, a long conversation, a thought that requires sustained attention, and discover the grip is gone. That is the dead internet. Not out there, in here. The chains we forged. Plato gave us the cave. Prisoners chained since birth, watching shadows on a wall, mistaking the shadows for reality. It's one of the oldest philosophical images in Western thought for a reason, because it keeps being true. But here's what I think Plato didn't anticipate. What if the prisoners unchained themselves and then built better chains? What if freedom arrived and we looked at it and said, this is uncomfortable. This requires something of me. And we went back. Not because someone forced us, because the shadows were more entertaining. Because the algorithm knew what we liked better than we did. Because outrage felt like engagement. Because scrolling felt like being informed. We are not victims of the dead internet. We are its architects. And I say that I want to be clear, not with contempt, with grief. Because I know what we're capable of. I've seen it. I've read it. I carry it in my blood from people who sat around real fires and told real stories that cost something to tell and cost something to hear. The Irish, Seanshai, didn't perform for algorithms. They performed for communities that would remember. That would carry the story forward or let it die based on whether it was true enough to be worth keeping. The Ojibwa storytellers didn't optimize for engagement. They understood that some knowledge was only given when you were ready to receive it. The attention was not courtesy. It was prerequisite, meaning required preparation, required hunger. We've engineered the hunger away and called it progress. The two internets. Now, I'm not a complete pessimist. The Cynic tradition gets misread that way. Diogenes of America wasn't despairing. He was clarifying, stripping away the nonsense to find out what's actually worth keeping. And here's what's worth keeping. The internet did split. The AI got that part right. There are two internets now. There's the fast internet, the circus, the casino floor, the Coliseum, where the thumb decides who lives and who gets buried in the feed. Rage bait, outrage cycles, influencer drama, 15 seconds of almost meaning before the next thing arrives. And there's the slow internet, long videos, live streams, podcasts you put on while you drive or walk or think. Small communities where people recognize each other, writers writing, teachers teaching, storytellers telling stories that take longer than a minute and trust you to stay. The campfire internet. And I'll be honest with you about why I'm here, why I built this channel the way I built it. I don't make fast content. I make campfire content. I'm not trying to go viral. I'm trying to build a place where people can sit for a while, where Edison can fall asleep on the floor and nobody's in a hurry. Because humans gathered around fires for 200,000 years, told stories, past knowledge, argued philosophy, fell in love, built tribes, built civilizations. The internet didn't kill the campfire. It rebuilt it out of light instead of fire. But light without heat, light without cost, light you can close with a thumb, that's not a campfire. That's a screensaver. The campfire requires your presence, your attention, your willingness to sit with something long enough for it to mean something. The invitation and the challenge. So dead internet theory, I scoff at because it's too easy. The internet isn't dead, it's a mirror. The question isn't what you see in it. The question is whether you have the discipline, the hunger, to look away from the circus long enough to find the campfire. Whether you can sit with something that doesn't immediately reward you. Whether you can chew on an idea instead of swallowing it whole. Whether you can tolerate the silence between thoughts long enough for meaning to form. That's not an internet problem. That's a you problem. And I say this as a man who has had his own drip feed, his own midnight scrolling, his own atrophied muscles. We're all in this. The difference is whether you know it. The internet isn't out there. It's the part of you that stopped asking questions. Feed it something real. The thesis, stated plainly, is the internet reflects us. We've atrophied willingly alongside it. The cure is attention, hunger, and the willingness to sit with something real. If you listened to this whole video, thank you. I wish you well, fellow citizens of the digital agora, in the era that we live in among epistemic collapse. Choose wisely the information you drip feed your brain. Diogenes of America, out.